Hello everyone, welcome back to Strawberry Podfic. We are once again reading It's a Small World, but before we get into this chapter, I would like to remind everyone that we have the tags Abusive Midoriya Hisashi, Neglectful Midoriya Inko, Past Child Abuse, and are there any other tags that would be triggering? There's All Might bashing. I think that's about it for the triggering tags. If I see anything else come up, I'll mention it. Shota, this is, It's a Small World, Chapter 2. Shota threw himself onto the rooftop that was their meeting place this month with a sigh. It had been a long day that had already been part of a long week. But what else was new when you had 2 full-time jobs? At least taking care of criminals was easier than taking care of a class full of children. And no, he didn't care that they were teenagers. If they were going to act like children, he was going to call them children. There was a reason he'd expelled his entire class this year. "Hi, Eraser Dad!" The only other figure on the roof chirped with his distorted voice, giving him a cheerful wave. The vigilante was short, not surprising given his age, and dressed in dark, somewhat fitted clothing that allowed for ease of movement, but still had some sort of lightweight armor woven in that provided an extra level of protection, fingerless gloves, and a utility belt, and a helmet that covered his entire head, not unlike a motorcycle helmet. The helmet was originally black, but over the years had slowly become peppered in various ghost stickers, the vigilante poking fun at the moniker the police had originally given him for lack of anything else to call him. "Problem child," Shota huffed, settling down next to the vigilante where he was sitting against the short wall lining the roof. Startling him slightly, the minute spasm in his hands was small, but still caught by the hero's keen eyes. Shota felt his concern ratcheting up. Something had to have happened for his kid to be that distracted. He had great situational awareness, personally trained into him by Shota himself, and he'd learned the hard way not to let that slip during a patrol. The man pulled a bento box out of his uniform and passed it over, while Ghost unhooked the lower front half of his helmet that covered his chin and mouth, leaving it to hang from the side of the top half. "Zashi made katsudan for you." "Yes!" The kid cheered as he dug in, causing Aizawa to hide a grin in his capture scarf, knowing it was the kid's favorite. "They make it the best. I'll be sure to let him know that you think so." "You better." The kid had entered the scene as a vigilante somewhere around 2 years ago, slipping into and out of the smaller crimes he preferred to stop while avoiding police and heroes alike, like the phantom they'd named him after. For the longest time, all they had to go on were a string of whoever the kid had stopped that night, with the occasional victim description of someone small suddenly there, taking down the would-be attacker with surprise and a well-thought-out plan, and usually just as suddenly gone. Though he had occasionally stayed to comfort some of the younger or more scared victims before melting into the shadows just before police arrived. Something about it had set off warning sirens for Shota. He'd never sought credit for any of his takedowns, not uncommon for vigilantes, given what they did was technically illegal, but he also gave them nothing to go on. Most, at least, gave themselves a name. That combined with the smaller stature and the sarcasm/references some of the witnesses had reported, had given Shota a bad feeling about the whole thing. His husband and some of their friends, Nem and Tensei, had teased him about his dad tendencies when he expressed concern it was a kid, but now had shared the same gut feeling, even if he thought Ghost was in his late teens at the youngest. None of them had been happy when Shota had gotten confirmation/first met the kid completely on accident. Ghost had always been smart about who he went after and how he did it, and while he clearly had some sort of training, he was still young. Shota almost had a heart attack when he saw just how young the kid was, and less experienced than the grown adult he was going up against, and well, accidents happened to even the best fighters. A flash of red caught his attention at the tail end of his patrol one night, a very distinctive and far too small pair of shoes, peeking out from behind a dumpster in an alley at ass o'clock in the morning that Shota, as an underground hero, was very familiar with the statistics associated with. He'd done what any logical and decent person would do and moved to offer what help he could, honestly half dreading that he'd be finding a body. Luckily, the kid was alive, curled up in what shelter he'd been able to find in the beanie/dark sweatpants/cloth face mask that had made up the first iteration of his vigilante gear. Shota still didn't know where the kid had gotten his current gear and was desperately curious. Kids shouldn't have access to armor, lightweight or otherwise, helmets that doubled as gas masks and voice changers, or the sheer number of knives the kid had. Unluckily, he'd been stabbed in the side during his last fight, and like the absolute problem child he was, he put up one hell of a stink over getting proper medical attention. The saddest part was Shota wasn't even that surprised. He knew about the medical discrimination against the quirkless and could only imagine the issues the kid had faced from medical staff in the past that made him that reluctant to go to the hospital. As it was, it still took too much pleading and too many reassurances that Shota wasn't going to make a ghost remove his mask or give his name, and that he knew he couldn't arrest the kid for vigilantism due to the loophole the kid fell into just to get him to agree to see Recovery Girl. Overall, he wasn't very happy with the situation, and it burned that he had to agree to let the kid walk away at the end of it. But getting the kid healed took priority. The heartbreak and disappointment in Hisashi's eyes when he found out about the entire encounter had been nearly as crushing. Their entire group made tease Aizawa for his dad instincts. Apparently it was funnier, since Aizawa seemed less the type. But Hisashi was every bit as bad as he was, and this entire mess tore at them both. There was no way someone like Ghost would be out doing what he was doing if he had a solid home life or literally anyone looking out for him. But it was glaringly obvious the kid was going to fight anything tooth and nail against everything. But it was glaringly obvious the kid was going to fight anything tooth and nail against anything that could end up putting him in the system. Neither blamed him, not really, not with the scars Hisashi still bore from his own time in the system after deafening every caretaker he'd had until he learned to control, and the stories they'd learned from the online communities they were in for people with undesirable quirks, or the quirkless. Suffice to say, it took a negligible amount of time for them to decide to try and adopt Ghost. Once they could convince him, they'd been open to adoption for years if they'd stumbled across a kid that fit with them, and Ghost clearly needed someone in his corner. That had started Shota slowly working to earn Ghost's trust. It began with keeping an eye out for him on patrols and giving him medical supplies, then giving him food once he could be convinced it wasn't messed with, and helping patch him up, letting Shota give him tips and training him a bit during the patrols they'd started to share more often than not. Fast forward to the present day, Shota shook himself out of his ruminations as he pulled out a jelly pouch to drink before the patrol started. "You okay, Racer? You okay there, Racer?" Ghost asked, finishing up with the bento, helmet tilted towards the hero. "Looked like you were thinking some serious thoughts, and I know that's dangerous for you." "Brat." Shota smacked at Ghost's shoulder while the kid snickered. "I'm fine, just a long day. How was yours?" "Oh, you know, same old, the vigilante huffed, with an odd tone to his voice that, combined with what he'd noticed earlier, didn't bode well. Shota glanced over at him, eyes narrowed slightly in concern. It wasn't a tone he'd heard often, but when it had indicated a bad day or something having happened, and tended to foretell the kid being extra chaotic as he blew off steam as a result. "Anything you want to talk about?" The kid hesitated for a second before answering. "Not right now." The kid launched himself up to his feet after lightly tossing the bento box in Shota's lap and fixing the lower part of his helmet back in place, the voice distorter kicking back on before speaking again. "Think I hear some assholes who decided to fuck around and find out calling my name. Language problem child," Shota ignored Ghost's scoff as he hauled himself to his feet and tucked the bento box into a small hidden spot on the roof. He'd picked it up when the end of his patrol looped around back to this area, before pointing at the kid now bouncing on his feet in eagerness of a night of mischief. "Whatever you're thinking, no, I don't need you giving me any more gray hairs." "It's not my fault you're old," Ghost cackled, voice distorter making the sound robotic and slightly off. "Think your ancient bones can keep up with me tonight?" "Other way around, brat." Shota flashed a sinister grin Hisashi claims he picked up from Nezu before suddenly bolting into action and off the roof, leaving the kid to curse and race after him. After all, he was, once a problem child himself. Luckily, the patrol went more or less smoothly, most of the more malevolent side of the city's nightlife probably deciding it was safer to keep their heads down tonight after some sort of sledge villain incident had revealed All Might was in town. Shota had seen coverage of it on the news when he'd woken from his short, they were always too short, nap, and he'd been pissed at the heroes just standing on the sidelines. He never would have let students like that graduate. Their night was mostly spent chasing each other across the rooftops of Musutafu and an endless familiar back and forth that slowly pulled Ghost out of the strange funk he'd been in when the night had started. "Oh my God, did you see his face?" Ghost giggled as Shota joined him on the roof of a nearby building where he'd been waiting for Shota to pass off, one of the low-level drug dealers. I'm going to redo that entire fucking paragraph. "Oh my God, did you see his face?" Ghost giggled as Shota joined him on the roof of a nearby building where he'd been waiting for Shota to pass off the one low-level drug dealer they'd come across into police custody. Yes, you're a menace to society," Shota tapped the top of the helmet like he was patting the kid's hair. Now, has your hunger for chaos been satisfied, tiny gremlin? Or do Sashi and I need to be extra worried about you tonight?" "I'm not tiny," Ghost protested. Shota gave his helmet one last tap, exaggerating just how far down he had to move his hand to make contact, and earning himself a tiny robotic cuff. "And you don't have to worry about me. I can take care of myself. And Zashi's only met me twice. Twice or not, we both care about you. That's why we worry, not because we have to. I don't know what happened today to get you in that mood, and I'm not going to make you talk about it if you don't want to. But you know I don't like the idea of you being alone, especially if you're that upset. I know you say you're safe, wherever it is you call home, but I just want to remind you that you always have a place at ours, even if it's just for a night." Shota calmly watched his reflection in the blink visor as the kid contemplated. While he hadn't quite intended to have this conversation again, he meant every word and had no problem repeating it as many times as necessary. "I know Eraser, Dad," Ghost eventually gave, the same answer he always did, voice muted and soft. But not tonight. Give the babies scritchies for me, though?" Shota nodded. "They don't deserve it, but sure." Shota loved his cats, but that didn't mean they weren't still little demons. "Get back safe." "You too." With that, the two went their separate ways, the hero stopping to pick up the bento box on his way back to the house for a shower and what sleep he could get before work. He wished he knew what was holding the kid back, because it felt like more than just the struggle to believe someone actually wanted him. Until he knew what that was, though, there was nothing he could do to fix it. "Zashi's better at emotional stuff," Shota thought to himself, as he finally settled into bed, cuddled up next to the fast-asleep love of his life. Maybe he'll have some ideas about it. Then he finally closed his eyes and drifted to sleep. And that is the final chapter of... Not the final chapter. That's the end of this chapter. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye!